Okay, why are we here? Always a question that I like to ask. I mean, it's not an existential question, it's a practical question. I intend to enjoy myself over the next 3 days, and I hope that you will too. If there's anything even vaguely amusing that's said by anybody, please laugh, because it encourages me. Please laugh. But we're not really here for entertainment. And you might find the price of a seminar a little bit on the high side if all you got was entertainment. So are we here for ideas? Well, I love ideas. But I have a very strange view about ideas, which is there are too many ideas in the world. And I've only ever found 3 ideas that have been really useful in making money or developing a business. And we're going to be talking about those 3 ideas, 1 idea today, 1 idea tomorrow, and 1 idea the 3rd day. And the reason that we're only going to be talking about 1 idea a day is that it's all I can cope with. But it also may be actually more useful that way. But it's not really about ideas either. Is it about insight then? Using ideas to generate insight. I want almost everyone here, I think, is an entrepreneur or owner-manager of a business or a partner of such a person. And I want you, when you go away, to have insight about your business. Now, obviously, you have to do the thinking. All I do is just generate a few of the ideas, and you'll help each other do some of the thinking. So we want to get some insight. And the insight is arranged around the idea that we can make your business, or you can make your business, 10 times more valuable, 100 times more valuable. That is the sort of level of ambition, 1,000 times more valuable than it is at the moment. So that's going to be the focus of the insight. But this is not a seminar about insight either. I'm going to get to the point sooner or later. What I really want us to do is to focus on decisions and then the action that follows from decisions. And I'm going to be asking you today to make, you can call it 1 decision, you can make it 3 decisions, depending on how you count. But 1 decision is whether or not you should stop working so hard in your business. 1 decision is getting off the hamster wheel. And the whole idea behind that is that most of us, nearly all of us, work too hard. We are doing too much. And for the owner of a business, for the entrepreneur or the founder of a business, to actually be working very hard in the business is not only bad for him or her, but it's usually very bad for the business, and it takes value away from the business. So in order to get value into the business, you have to stop being on this hamster wheel. I've got a picture of a hamster wheel here. Let's see if it works. No, it doesn't work. Never mind. I'm probably doing it the wrong way. What's happened to my hamster wheel? There we are. One done. Hamster wheel. So there's a picture of a guy on a hamster wheel going round and round and round. And my suggestion to you, it won't be true for 100% of you, but I think it will be true for 95% or whatever, is that you are on the hamster wheel and you should probably get off the hamster wheel. And that's why the title of the day is Getting Off the Hamster Wheel. And getting off the hamster wheel means that you start to think about the business in a different way and you stop doing things. Doing things is bad, which is countercultural, isn't it? We think doing things is great. But actually, if you are doing things, you are not thinking about the business. And there are 3 reasons why getting off the hamster wheel might be a good idea. 1 reason is that you will enjoy life more. That's making you happy, which is good. It means that you can do other things as well as have your business. But the 2nd reason is that you will increase the value of the business very considerably by getting out of the business and thinking about the business in a different way. Now, this is not just theory. This is based certainly on 80-20 as a premise, but it's also based on the observation that I have of the people who have been most successful in business are those who actually have done very little, but who have set things up in a way that the organization can be very, very successful. And I'm going to be talking about Bill Bain, I'm going to be talking about Bruce Henderson and various other people that I've observed that have actually done this. And the most important reason, though, to get out of the business is that if you are working in the business 50 hours a day, 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week, and so on and so forth, you have no value of equity in the business because you cannot sell the business. You can't sell the business because they will want you because you're indispensable to the business. So in order to make a business saleable, you have to get out of the business, paradoxically, and you have to make it a machine. It has to be something that can actually deliver without you being there. Now, of course, you can be there for some time and you have a very valuable role, but you're setting the thing up for, at some stage, getting an exit out of the business so that it can be valuable to somebody else without you being there. And so the questions which I'm going to ask you to think about today are these. Firstly, should you get off the hamster wheel? To which the approved answer is probably, but not necessarily. I'll talk about some exceptions. The second question is, if you're going to get off the hamster wheel, when are you going to do it? It's very easy to make a decision. You're going to get off the hamster wheel. But in order to make it real, for it really to happen, you've got to set a date. You've got to give yourself a deadline. And I would suggest that that deadline should not be less than a year or more than 5 years. Probably 2 years might be a good point. But you have to decide, obviously. And the third question is, if you're going to get off the hamster wheel, how the hell are you going to do it? And I'm going to talk about 6 different ways that you can actually get off the hamster wheel and help yourself that way. Now, let me see if I can do the clicker. Otherwise, I'm just going to have to talk. No, there we go. So the reasons to get off the hamster wheel are, number one, you want to do something else specific. It's not good enough for you to say, I actually want to get off the hamster wheel. I'm tired. I'm working too hard. I'm stressed. That may be true. But it is not good enough because you will find shortly after you come, have a break or whatever, get out of the business for a day, a week, a month, 3 months or whatever, that you'll suffer these symptoms, these really, really dangerous symptoms, which are you actually want to get back into the business. You're actually suffering from withdrawal symptoms. And why is that? Because one of the great things about business is it becomes all-absorbing. One of the great things about business is anyone who runs a business is an important person in their own world, a very important person. Everyone wants to get to talk to you. Everyone wants to see you. They measure their prestige, they measure their value, they measure their self-worth in many ways by how much time you spend with them, how important you are to them. And you're also in great demand. Everyone wants time of your day. Everyone wants to get in and see you. Everyone wants to spend time with you. And that is a narcotic. That is a drug. And getting off that is really, really difficult. And the reason I know this is because it's happened to me. Let me just go forward to the next slide. That person there on the left was me at age 40. Can you see how stressed I look? I know it's pretty scary to have to look at the picture, but it's meant to tell you something. This happened after I got off the hamster wheel, not before. So the reason that I was stressed was because I didn't have enough to do. Very, very stressful. And I'm absolutely serious about this. When I was 40, I stopped being a consultant. And I really, really wanted to stop being a consultant. I'd worked as a consultant for 15 years beforehand. And most of that time, I'd actually worked 70 hours a week, 80 hours a week, often 7 days a week. And I was tired and sick of it. I loved it. I loved the people. I even loved some of my clients. It just tells you how perverted I was. But I absolutely hated the sense that I couldn't take a day off. At least I thought that I couldn't take a day off. I hated the fact that I was chained to the salt mine, well, perhaps it was a gold mine. It was actually a very profitable business. But I was chained to this particular business. And then when I knew that I was going to be leaving the business, I was floating on air. It was absolutely fantastic. And then the first 2 or 3 months, they were great. I took a break. I went on vacation. It was fabulous. But then afterwards, I didn't know how to fill my time. I didn't know what to do. Nobody wanted to come and see me. I was really lonely. I began to feel not very important. I wasn't important because I was just someone who had a pile of cash. And I had no function in life. And much more important than the sort of externals was also the internal thing. I believe we all need meaning in our lives. And the way that you get meaning is by doing something useful for other people. Now, making a lot of money along the way is a very good thing to do as well, and that's usually an index that you're being useful to other people. But nevertheless, to not know what you're going to do or why you're going to do it, most people in this room anyway, I dare say, actually want to do something useful. And if you're going to stop doing one thing, you have to know what it is that you're going to do afterwards. And so the way to get off the hamster wheel, in my view, is to gradually wean yourself off the hamster wheel, spend a little bit of time doing other things, and develop your interests so that you know what else you want to do. It might be starting another business. It might be that you want to become a professional in a different area. It might be that you want to go to the racetrack. It might be that you want to train horses. That's fine. That's wonderful. What is it that you're going to do afterwards? It has to be something very specific. Because otherwise, like that person, that stressed person there, you'll spend a miserable 2 or 3, or in my case, probably about 4 or 5 years before I worked out what I wanted to do. And this is me, 10 years later, who knew what he wanted to do, which was write books and give the occasional talk, and also invest in startup and very young companies. And I knew what I was doing, and I liked doing it, and I could still have lots of leisure, but I had a purpose in life. And it's very, very important when you get off the hamster wheel, if you get off the hamster wheel, that you know what it is you're going to do instead. Because otherwise, you'll get back, you'll decide that you actually want to get back into the business. And there's nothing wrong. If you want to be in your business for the next 10 or 20 years, working 70 hours a week, there's nothing wrong with that if you really, really want to do that. The only corollary of that is that you will never, ever, ever have a valuable business, which is fine. You might have a moderately valuable, you might make income. You might make $1 million a year. But you will never have what I would regard as a valuable business because it will be an extension of yourself. And this is a very deep feeling that you've actually got to take yourself out of the business so that the business can operate as a machine without you. No, we won't come on to you yet, Bruce. Okay, so the first thing is you want to do something else specific most of the time. But the second reason to get off the hamster wheel, and in many ways a more important reason, is that you want to make the business much more valuable through redirecting the business. And you cannot redirect a business if you're working in it. You cannot be incredibly demanding if the person that you are making the demands of is you. It's just human nature. You can't do it. You can't actually take the thing to the next level because you haven't got the concept of taking it to the next level. Because if you had, you'd be there. So actually what you need to do is bring other people into the business in one way or another who are better than you are, or who are different and more imaginative, or that you together with them can work out. It is always easier to tell somebody to do something to a very, very high standard than it is to do it yourself. You've probably heard the expression, those who can do, those who can't teach. And I believe that that observation is both true and also profoundly misguided, because teaching is actually much more valuable than doing. Anyone can do once you've actually worked out what it is that you're trying to do. But it's the what which is more important. And making your business do the what in a way which will make it 10 times as valuable, or 100 times as valuable, or 1,000 times as valuable is what you can do, because you understand the business. You created the business. But you're not working in the business. Because if you're working in the business, it's going to come down to your level of execution skills. And you're going to be a bottleneck, because instead of there being one of you, there can be half a dozen, or there can be 10, or there can be hundreds of people who are actually adding a huge amount of value to the business. So it's very important that you want to make the business more valuable, as well as you want to withdraw from the business. And the third reason is the exit reason. It's nearly time, or it might be the time to exit the business. And I think that people do not think, owners of businesses do not think as often as they should, or as early as they should, about the value of the business and exiting the business. Because if you think about it, there are always reasons why it's hard to sell a business at a particular time. You know, maybe the stock market tanks. Maybe the economy is in a bad way. Maybe your own particular industry is not as highly valued as it was years ago. Maybe. You have to be prepared to sell a business ahead of time, when the time is right. So it's not a matter of waiting until the stock market's very high, your business industry is hot, everyone wants to buy this type of business. You need to be thinking about the exit before. And unless you're able to take yourself out of the business, you can't create equity of real value in the business. So you need to get out of the business earlier rather than later from that point of view. It's no accident that the two people who I have seen create more, who I personally knew and observed how they did it, and have added the most value, were also the idlest people that I've ever observed in business. So come back, Bruce. All is forgiven. This is Bruce Doolin Henderson. I have never, ever in real life seen him laugh like that. This is a staged photograph. He was a big man in all senses, very tall. Not fat, but he was big. And he was intimidating. Everybody in the Boston office of BCG, or whenever he went round and talked to the other offices, was absolutely terrified of Bruce. One of the vice presidents said to me, "Stay out of his way, he can only do you harm, he won't do you good." But I was an idiot, because he was looking around one day for someone to talk to, and I didn't get out of the way quickly enough. So actually I got to talk to Bruce quite a lot, which was also a terrifying experience, because he would ask you questions, and he would clearly be completely unsatisfied with your answer. And then he would give you a lecture for about 45 minutes. And if you weren't absolutely petrified, it was wonderful, because what he said was very interesting. But most people, in fact, me to start with, were absolutely scared, etc. You know, we were scared. And he was a pretty demanding guy. But his thing was ideas. He had this concept that business ideas were the key to creating wealth. And he also was an absolute genius, because not only did he focus on the whole idea and invented this whole idea of business strategy, which is a highfalutin expression for what previously was known as market research and financial analysis. And he put those two things together to create strategy, which could be sold at enormously more expensive prices than market research or financial analysis. But he also invented this thing called the growth share matrix. And I'm not going to focus this morning on growth share matrix for its own sake, but I just want to think about it as a business tool because it's such a wonderful example to me of something very simple that can be described in 5 minutes, but which is very useful in a business. And for 15 years, Bain & Company and Boston Consulting Group grew, and their imitators and rivals, who were usually people who'd worked in one of those two firms, grew at 30%, 40%, 50%, in one case 100% a year. And the world was soon being filled with these strategy consultants, these pernicious people, usually about 23 years old, usually an undergraduate who'd spent some time in BCG, sometimes MBAs, oh dear, terrible people. But from a business point of view, the great thing about these people was that they were cheap. Now, I know they're not cheap anymore, but at the time they were very cheap. And the alternative to that was what consulting or boardroom consulting was like before the Boston Consulting Group, which was McKinsey, basically. And firms like McKinsey, really boring, you know, people who were dressed very well. They were usually in their 50s or 60s even. They had an incredibly impressive collection of hats. If you went into a McKinsey office in the 1960s, I'm told, I never did it, but I did in the 70s and they were still there. The first thing you saw was this enormous hat rack and all these hats. And these people who were the McKinsey consultants had seen it all, done it all, and now they were selling their experience. And that was the whole idea of a boardroom consultant, someone who was a very respectable, experienced, mature, incredibly boring person. And what Bruce saw, the business insight that he had, was that you could sell not experience, but ideas. And if you could package the ideas in a very snazzy way, and I believe a really, really useful way, because I still use this thing, about the only person in the world who does. But, you know, if you could actually package that way, you could take cheap people from university or people who just newly minted MBAs. You could pay them a relatively small amount of money, and you could sell them at the same price as these guys with the hats. Fantastic. So you can have big margins, as opposed to McKinsey's relatively, well, big margins, but bigger margins. And this was the genius of Bruce. And genius was thinking of a new way of doing consulting. And the other genius was realizing that you could sell ideas rather than experience. The two things are really the same, two sides of the same coin. But what about Bruce himself? Bruce never did any consulting. He refused to do it. As soon as he got some consulting work, what he would do is call up a professor from the Harvard Business School or a contact of his, and he would get them to come and do the assignments for him. He realized that it was much more important to structure the thing than to actually be leading in the trenches. And the other thing which Bruce did was he spent all of